Hello, you're watching In the Cool of the Day. I'm your host, Tia Young. Our special guest today is Ms. Milan A. Griffin, Director of Training and Outreach for Home Free USA. Some of you may say, well, why do you have someone on an inspirational show talking about purchasing a home and things involving a home? Well, my friends, many of us who are of the inspirational persuasion are losing our homes, or we can't even purchase a home. So the housing situation affects everybody, regardless to your color, race, creed, sexual orientation, state of disability, or inspirational preference. So yes, we need to hear from our special guest today. Milan, welcome to In the Cool of the Day.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. I hope the traffic wasn't too bad today.
It wasn't. Actually, it wasn't. One of my coworkers, it's raining outside, one of my coworkers said, you know you need to leave 2 hours early. And so I skated out with an hour to 15 minutes. It was not too bad.
Okay, very good. Well, this is a very important subject about our economy, number one, and two, about what's happening in the home market. So we're delighted to have you here to share with us today.
Definitely.
Why is it so important to buy a home now?
Well, as many may know, some may not know, I mean, your interest rates are still at an all-time low, and so are the home prices, but the home prices are slowly creeping up, and some areas the prices are creeping up quicker than others.
Okay.
And so if you're buying in a place like Washington, D.C., for example, the market is real tight already. You know, I bought my house in October 2011, and I bought my house for $250,000. The house across the street from me 6 months later was on the market for $350,000. Oh, so that just goes to show you, and even areas that have been kind of your no man's land and everybody is scared to go to in DC are becoming hot zones for development. And then you have investors, overseas investors or even investors locally, you know, who can put cash down. And so, you know, prices are creeping up. We do want to make sure that, you know, folks act on the situation that is at hand now. You know, take advantage of the lower interest rates, take advantage of home prices that are still in your favor before they skyrocket, because what you don't want to do is try to dive in full force when it becomes a seller's market. Right. You know, when the sellers it's their zone and they can just do whatever in price point because the demand is so high. Right. And also, you know, rents are increasing due to demand. You have a lot of people who are being denied for their loans because the mortgage industry has tightened up their standards so much for loan approval. So you do, and also you have a surge, I know in this area, specifically in the DC area, you also had a surge of construction. Condos that were built, a lot of them didn't sell, then they're being turned over to rent. And so you don't want to be caught up in the whole rental increase, you know, situation as well. And then home ownership just has a lot of great benefits, and I'm sure we'll talk about as we go through. Right.
Well, one thing I would say, and I'll ask you, what do you think about this? I've talked to some people, and they're from out of town, they're not in this area. They said, oh, you people up in Washington, you all are insulated from everything. I mean, you know, everybody else out in America, in real America, is having problems, but then they come here and they see the malls and they go to Tyson's and they see, you know. So do you think that we are insulated a little bit from some of the things that other people are going through?
Yes
cities?
And no. I mean, you haven't, again, it really is like county to county, place to place, even within this area. So you have PG County, for example, that is just a stone's throw from the DC line, and they were affected by some of the highest foreclosure rates in the nation. So, and then you have DC on the other hand, that therefore DC largely, for the most part, has a pretty stable economy because the federal government is here, even though the federal government is going through a whole bunch of back and forth now. But, you know, at the end of the day, so partially, I do agree with that statement, but again, it really just depends on the zone in which you are talking of. I mean, and then the unemployment rate in the DC area has also been high. I mean, you know, so it is following a lot of the trends of the rest of the country, but again, you know, it just depends on exactly where you're talking about within the area.
Right, right. Well, we're going to back up a little bit, and this is probably a question I should have asked you first, because you are Director and Operations Officer for Home Free USA.
Yes.
Tell us, what and who is Home Free USA.
Yes, thank you. Well, Home Free USA, we're a nonprofit housing counseling organization, and we have been in business since 1995. And since that time, we've put over, I won't say put, but we have helped over 7,000 people buy their first home. And we have helped a multitude of homeowners prevent foreclosure. And so we really work hand in hand with the community, and you can even call us an intermediary between the community and a lot of corporate entities, a lot of big time lenders and banks. And we help not only the community achieve their home ownership and their financial goals, but we also help our partners, a lot of corporate partners, to better reach and more effectively reach the communities that they serve.
Okay, very good. What are some of the, and I don't know if you can enumerate them, if they're like the 5, 6, or 7 critical things that home buyers really need to know?
Well, definitely. So if you're looking to buy a home, there are some really basic steps to follow. And forgive me, because I may say a couple steps twice because they're really just that important.
Right.
So they need to be repeated.
That's fine.
Number one, folks definitely need to get with a HUD-approved nonprofit housing counseling organization. That will be one step I probably repeat 2 or 3 times, because traditionally we have been framed to think that my first stop, I wake up one day and want to buy a home, and the first person I call is a realtor. And it's nothing against realtors, but the reality is we need to be knowledgeable about the investment, that probably the largest investment of our life. And a realtor is not being paid to teach us about the home buying process. They are being paid to find the right home for us and for various other services. And so we don't want to outsource our knowledge or outsource our ability to make informed decision, our ability to, really go through the process and avoid costly mistakes and avoid a level of frustration and stress that's inherent in the process if you don't know what you're doing. And so I would say step 1, call, contact, and get with a HUD-approved nonprofit housing counseling organization. I also say HUD-approved because you have many organizations that may say, look, we'll fix your credit, we'll do whatever, and we'll get you into the home, or we'll get you the credit score of your dreams. But the reality is HUD-approved nonprofits have a kind of federal overhead. So you have a person or entity to call when that organization may not be working to the greater benefit. So again, working with a HUD-approved nonprofit housing counseling organization like a Home Free USA is definitely step 1.
So there are scam artists out here.
You do have scam artists. And even if I know we're concentrating a lot on home buying, and that's my forte, but even if you're a home owner, I can tell you, Tia, so many people come to us that say, I'm 2 months behind in my mortgage payment. I'm scared I'm going to be foreclosed on, and I was paying this lawyer or paying this random group $3,000 to fix something. And my first thought is, I'm not a counselor when I'm hearing these stories. My first thought is, you should have taken that money and put it back in your house, and that is, and I don't mean to, be facetious or anything, but the reality is sometimes we're so trusting of organizations. Which is great, but you do have to be very mindful of who you're investing in, because scams do exist. Same thing with credit repair restoration folks. We're paying them, you could pay them $50, $60, $70, whatever, $100 a month or some big fee. But the reality is, number one, you can get a HUD-approved nonprofit housing counseling agency if they have that service to do it for you at a nominal cost. And number two, a lot of what is said about the credit restoration are things that you can do on your own with a level of guidance. When usually the saying is, what is it? When somebody promises you big things or things that sound too good to be true, they probably are. One of those, so just be mindful of that. But I would say step 1, if you're looking to buy your home or even to avoid foreclosure with this particular one, call a HUD-approved nonprofit housing counseling agency so they can give you the guidance you need. Step 2, I would definitely say is really check what is on your credit. Really know what's on your credit. We do have the annual free credit report. I believe it's annualfreecredit.com. I'm not sure if that's the exact website, but needless to say, check your credit, know what's on it, and then get expert professional advice as to how you can go about resolving it. I speak to a lot of people and they're saying, I'm gonna work with Home Free to get my home, but I just have some credit issues to clear up first. And my thing to them is, you are wasting a whole bunch of time trying to tackle this huge mountain yourself when you can have somebody create the strategy for you, provide motivation, answer your questions, and really be a guidepost through that process.
Right, that makes sense.
So get that credit in line. Another thing is check your debt. You got, and that kind of goes hand in hand with credit. Check your debt. You know, we have to be mindful of how much debt we have. You know, in American society, debt has, in so many ways, it does have a positive benefit, but the overuse of it has a negative benefit. And so we, many times, have not been taught how to use it. So we overuse it or we misuse it, and then we wind up with faulty credit. Or we wind up with a debt load that's so high.
The debt to income.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
we can't afford anything. We're stressed out. We're trying to avoid bill collectors and everything else from calling. And so with that said, you do need to check your debt. Along with that, I would say the fourth step, and this is all really interrelated though, would be to check your savings. You know, really check your savings. You can, even if you qualify for a down payment and closing cost assistance program, and they say, you know what, you can come to the table with $500, you can come to the table with no money. The reality is they still want to see money saved. And what people don't realize is when you're going to the lender, you have your loan officer, which is the face of the lender, right? And that's the person that's on your team. So because they want to get the loan closed, you want, you know, so you're working with them directly, but there's a person called the underwriter that nobody sees. And so that underwriter is not saying, oh, Tia, you know what, you're pretty, you have a nice smile, so I'm gonna go ahead and approve this loan for you. You know, or you go to church every Sunday, whatever. Their underwriters, the only thing they have to go by is the story that is told from the paperwork you submit. And their job is to fact check you so much, it's almost like getting government clearance. That's how deeply they're checking you now. Their job is to check you so much, and essentially your paperwork is a character reference. You know, it's when you have a high credit score, right, wrong, or indifferent, it says to a person, it says to the underwriter, it says to the lender, you know what, Tia's credit score is a 779, and she has, you know, consistent set pattern of savings, and, you know, her debt is low, and she pays people back on time. I know that beyond everything, I can trust Tia to pay it back my loan. You know, and the reality is when you have the opposite, when you have that faulty credit score, and when you have low debt and no savings or no consistent pattern of savings, but then you owe MasterCard, Visa, Macy's, and everybody else money, the lender, the first thing they're saying in their mind is, I can't even trust you to pay back my money. You know,
that's right.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. We're going to take a short station break, so don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with Miss Milan A. Griffin of Home Free USA.
Stay tuned to In the Cool of the Day, where a breeze is always flowing.
You're watching In the Cool of the Day. I'm your host, Tia Young, with our special guest, Miss Milan A. Griffin. Now, before the break, we were on step number 4, savings. So what else? Is there more? Are these the four big?
There are a couple more. The next tip, and these are kind of insider tips that a lot of home buyers probably would not traditionally hear. The next tip is, when you're buying a home, you have to understand you're essentially about to start your own business. And when as you're starting this business, you have certain employees. Your realtor is your employee. Your lender is your employee. Your home inspector is your employee. They are all getting paid, and there's several, you know, like your appraiser, but your appraiser is a lot of times appointed by the lender. But needless to say, you have a group of employees. And oftentimes as home buyers, we think that we're at the mercy of them versus the other way around.
That's true.
You know, because you're the only one, and when you're buying a home, you're the only one in the process that's actually paying money out. Everybody else is making money on the deal, it's some way down the line. So with that said, I would say suggestion or tip number 5 when you're going through the home buying process is, be realistic and be mindful of who you're working with and choose wisely, but at the same time, don't feel like you have to be attached, if, you know, forever to whomever you have already signed up with. So again, I am not saying, because I don't want realtors calling me and saying, look, why they switch 5 realtors? I'm not saying that, because it does become a headache for the home buyer more so than anything. But I will say that home buyers need to get people that are working for their best interest at heart. People that are not going to rush them. People that are not going to have them, you know, just kind of sign on the dotted line and close the deal. Because at the end of the day, when you sign your closing papers and those keys are given to you, nobody else is around at that point. I don't care if this is your best friend. It's not like a shirt you bought at Marshall's where you find a stain on it and now you want to exchange it. It's not that. That house is legally bound to you.
Right.
And so you want to treat all of your employees that are in this process as people that you are literally hiring to do the best job for you. So if you're having a realtor, and it's important to balance high expectations with reality, because I know when we go through this process, we can be really emotionally charged.
Right.
Like, you know, I call my realtor 10 times. I don't know why he said call me back, you know, why he calls me back two times for every 10. But I will say that if you don't feel prioritized, if you feel solidly rushed, if your inner being is screaming at you, walk away, like this is not working, and you feel like beyond everything you're being as realistic as possible and as fair as possible, don't be scared to possibly switch your realtor. Don't be scared to, you know, work with a different lender if you have to. You know, don't be scared. And with that point also, when you're looking for your loan, you also want to really solicit 3 lenders or so.
Right.
I'm not saying that you just have to like go to everybody, but you do want to shop around. A lot of times people feel, well, I bank with Bank of America, so I have to go with them for my loan, or I bank with Wells Fargo. That's not necessarily true. So you do want to be mindful of that. Tip number 5, you are starting your own business. You do want to have employees on your team that are furthering your efforts and that are really working to support you and not the bottom line, which is the commission that they're going to get at the end of the day. And especially with that home inspector, and I would actually say this is tip number 6. And then I have 2 more tips.
These are tips that you are working with people from U.S. Home to help them really get this in their heads.
Yeah. Now these are right,
Okay.
exactly. Like with the tips I'm giving right now, this is what my colleagues and I at Home for USA that we work with all the time, and
Right.
these are the things that I will at a class even suggest to people.
Okay.
Tip number 6 is you better get the right home inspector.
Uh-oh.
And then I'm also saying from personal information. I mean, from so don't go with a home inspector just because your realtor suggested or your lender suggested or the home inspector is your best friend. You want to go with a home inspector that has a proven track record of success. And that home inspector is critical and key, because I'm telling you, what a home inspector does or does not pick up in your house could cause you to not have to or have to spend many $1,000s in need of repairs. So for example, I had a friend of mine, never got home ownership counseling, didn't really understand the importance of the home inspector, got, just somebody off the street. Needless to say, for some reason, and I think the home inspector was referred by the realtor.
Okay.
Needless to say, the home inspector missed, and I don't know how you do, a big chunk of mold in their basement.
Oh my.
So he calls Home Free after the fact of buying to say to us, I have this big chunk of mold in the basement and everything. And my first point to him was, well, where's your home inspector? Did they not pick it up? And he said, no, that mold didn't just grow out anywhere. So you do want to be mindful of how important your home inspector is. And there's a home inspector, I won't say his name on the show, but and everybody, all realtors and lenders, they hate him. But it's a good thing because he works on the side of the consumer. And he will tell you, as soon as you walk in, I know you love this house, but look, this house has a big crack going through the wall, so it's probably like a settlement, something or another. So you really want to be mindful of that. And when the home inspection happens, you have to be there. You don't physically have to be there. That's not a requirement, but I'd strongly suggest you be there.
Need to be there.
So that you're understanding of what you're buying, because people, when you buy a home, that is a marathon. It's not a sprint. You're in that loan for 15 to 30 years. So you do want to be very comfortable with your buying, and what you do in the home buying process is really dictates the success throughout the life of your loan. And so I would say my 6th tip is to get organized. Just like I said before about you have your loan officer who's the face, and he's kind of like your advocate on behalf of the lender.
Right.
But you have that underwriter that is like looking through everything, and they've never met you before, so it's not like they can say, oh, Tia, she's a nice lady. I'm just going to go ahead and approve this loan. She's looking through your paperwork. So with that, you are required to submit a lot of paperwork. Many forests have been destroyed because of all the paperwork that is required required by the mortgage industry, right? But I can understand it, you know, because I know if I loan somebody $5, I want my money back. So if they're loaning somebody $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 and up, they want their money back, and I don't blame them. And so with that being said, you do want to make sure that you get organized. Luckily, you have online banking. Some people like to do the paper-based loan officers when they require you to give paperwork. You can email it to them, you can fax it to them, but you do want to make sure your stuff is organized. You want to make sure your stuff is easily accessible and it can be delivered in a timely format.
Right.
And then my last point is, and I'll close out with this, with my tips, with this 7th point is, call a nonprofit housing counseling organization so they can guide you through the process.
Yeah.
Honestly, I don't care if you graduated from high school, college, got your PhD, master's degree, or whatever. There are a lot of things to consider as you are going through the home buying process. And again, what you do in this couple of months leading up to a year or however long a time it takes you, what you do prior to the loan approval stage and prior to that closing stage is literally what dictates the future of the success of your home buying experience. So you do want to make sure you get with a HUD-approved nonprofit housing counseling organization in your area so that you can get the support, you can get the guidance, and you can get the help that you need to make an informed decision, because that nonprofit is looking out for your best interest only. They're not getting a commission. They're looking out for your best interest. So definitely get that education and get with the nonprofit that is going to really navigate the way for you.
Wow. You know, just listening to you, I'm thinking about when I bought my first home many, many years ago, which I sold that one. I nowhere near had the information that you are sharing with us now. And I know a lot of people don't. They just don't know. They just don't know any better at all. What are some of the benefits of home ownership?
Well, several. You have tax benefits. You know, you can write off some parts of your property taxes and insurance off on your taxes, so you do have that. You also have equity. You know, as your house appreciates in value, you could potentially, and I would suggest also, if you pull the equity out, you should do this under the guidance of people that know what they're doing, such as refer back to the nonprofit housing counseling organization. Right. But needless to say, you know, as your home appreciates, you can pull out the amount of equity, the amount of increase, and possibly do things to pay for big investments, like pay for your child's college tuition, so they don't have to repeat the cycle of debt, and they can really start off their life in a really forward upward progression fashion. Right. You also have a lot of lifestyle benefits. I mean, it's nothing like when you can go home and you can decorate, and you can go home and you don't have to worry about kids running all throughout, you know, the apartment complex above you.
When you leave.
Yeah, exactly. Or having to worry about the heating coming on for the whole building, and it's already, you know, it's already 30 degrees outside. So you do have lifestyle benefits. You know, it's a huge sense of pride. You work towards something, you know, and I often call it almost like losing weight. You know, as you go through the home buying process, just as you are losing weight, you have to take on a huge amount of discipline, focus, drive, and a lot of other great attributes. And so, but it may kind of be tough along the way depending on your particular situation, but once you get to that golden mark, it's a beautiful thing. Right. Yeah, so there are a lot of other benefits, but I would say those 3 specifically
are the ones. Well, Milan, you are a wealth of information, and there is no way that we have touched the surface on your knowledge and on the things that the viewers need to hear. Yeah. But we're out of time. Oh. It looks like our time is up, folks. So we want to thank you so much, Milan A. Griffin of Home Free USA, for helping us to sort through the maze of purchasing a home. Before you do anything, take the time to make sure that you are credit worthy, as you've heard today. You can follow every step that Milan has given us today, but if your credit is a little funny, you're not going to be able to get a mortgage from any lender, and trust me, the lenders stick together. So, you know, you need to check out that credit. And as we talked about earlier, I know 3 of the major credit bureaus, I think, are Equifax, TransUnion, and Experience. Am I right? Yeah. Okay. So, and do it sooner rather than later. If you have any questions or comments about this show, please email me at 2013@gmail.com. If you have questions of Milan, please take note of her information on the television screen scrolling. Thank you for watching In the Cool of the Day. Milan, you want to say bye-bye?
Bye.
Bye-bye. We'll see you real soon. Thank you for watching.